Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church. It's good to be with you today. It's a wonderful day. It really is. Every day is a wonderful day if we look to see what God's doing. And I hope that's how you're starting out your new year. Maybe you can make a New Year's resolution. Every day I'm going to look for God's presence. That would be a good thing to do. And this morning I have a passage that I'd like to share with you that says something reasonably related to that. It's Psalm 62 and verses 1 and 2. And it says this: I wait quietly before God, for my victory comes from him. He alone is my rock and my salvation, my fortress, where I will never be shaken. Well, let's think about that for a minute. The psalmist says, I wait quietly before God. Are you very good at waiting, much less quietly? I saw a bumper sticker years ago that said, God give me patience and be quick about it. Waiting is not something our culture really embodies very much. We're impulsive. We want action. We want something to happen when we want it to happen. And we want it our way in most cases. And I'm not saying that that's bad. It's a little selfish for sure, but it's just the way our culture looks at things. But that's not the way God looks at it. So the psalmist says, I wait quietly before God. You know, much of my prayer life is spent listening, not talking. I spend a lot of time waiting to hear back from God. I mean, after all, if I'm going to pray and ask things, I ought to be, I don't know, I ought to be smart enough to hang around and hear what the answer is. And to do that, you have to wait and you have to listen and you have to do it quietly. So many times our listening is rather loud, and we're really good at telling God what we want Him to do. We're not quite so good at asking Him, what does He want me to do? And then waiting for the answer. So the psalmist says, I wait quietly before God, for my victory comes from him. The psalmist understands that everything comes from God. Is that how you look at it? I know a lot of people who don't. They look at it quite the other way. God only does things when they're not able to. And they charge on ahead with their plans based on their abilities. And, you know, God has given all of us lots of ability. You have lots of ability to do things. You have a lot of power in your hand. You may feel powerless at the moment. Something may be overwhelming you and taking charge in a way you can't fathom, but you're not powerless. You have a lot of gifts and graces. But yet, it really all does come from God. He's the one that's given us everything that we have. I I used to get kind of tickled to hear sermons about tithing. You have to give God 10% back. And it was kind of like, well, that's sort of strange. If it's all His, then we just give whatever He wants us to. And maybe that's 10%, and maybe it's 50%. It all belongs to Him anyway. Yet we hoard things, and we hoard our abilities instead of acknowledging that God is the source of all we have. Well, then the psalmist goes on to say, He alone, that's God, is my rock and my salvation, my fortress where I will never be shaken. You ever had something to happen that shook you? You ever have had something happen that seemed like it came out of the blue and it was monstrous, and you're just left almost not able to breathe? Well, a lot of people have. A lot of people are at this very moment dealing with situations like that. I hear a lot of parents talk about their children, not necessarily young children either, and say, you know, I can't make my child do the right thing. There are a lot of things that we cannot do. And when those moments come and they seem insurmountable, they really aren't, because God is still there. He says, God is my fortress. I will never be shaken. Now, that doesn't mean that nothing bad will ever happen. I guess that would be nice. Hasn't been my life, so I can't really imagine what that might be like. But when those bad things do happen, we still have a foundation to stand on, and that's God's presence and promises. See, we go back to the first thing. I wait quietly before God. When disaster strikes, what do? Well, let me suggest that the first thing you ought to do is say something like, God, now what? Because there's always life after the disaster. There's always life still yet to be lived. There's always something down the road that we can't see, that we don't have any idea about. But when God is our foundation, whatever happens in life, we can weather the storm because He wants us to trust Him. And God knows what He's doing. I don't know what He's doing sometimes. And I've had to pray many times, God, I don't know what you're doing. Help me to trust you because I know you do. So when you reach some of those points in your life, or if you're already at some, what do I do? Well, perhaps your first response should be, golly God, now what? And then wait quietly for Him to answer. If you'll wait, you'll hear His answer. What do you think about that today? Hope you have a great day. If you have a need or a prayer concern that we can help you with, please let us know. We'll do everything we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Thank you for listening. God bless you. I'll talk to you again.